Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating, modern romance, modern love, everything modern in these unprecedented times as we dig into the whys of people's behavior and whys of your own behavior. COVID has I think just opened up a can of worms for a lot of people in terms of like getting to know themselves. I think I've learned a lot about myself during this time, things that I thought I got over, like things that I had worked through in the past, but everything is sort of like surfacing again, which is interesting to me. But mental health is one of those buzzwords that keeps popping up, and it's really prevalent right now.
Well, now that we're entering the second wave, right, in the US, I feel like there is even more time to devote to that. But I was actually looking at stats, and this is kind of crazy, but it said that depression since COVID has tripled in the US, like people that have kind of gone and seeked help for depression. So that's just even people seeking it. Like, I know a lot of people have been really struggling with the isolation, and now that things are shutting down again in California, probably other states will start to follow. It's crazy. Like, I feel like I've just been talking to a lot of people recently that, have been dealing with feeling this like loneliness, which feeds into depression. And yeah, like we're going to go into all the weeds today with our guest, Tony, that we're super excited to have on. But it's almost like depression is like a vicious cycle. Like I think about this, especially with relationships. And Yue and I both talk about our own experiences, either, like having bouts of depression, but also dating people that are depressed. And it's a really hard situation because it's like, I don't know, I think of it like a cycle. It's like the person that is experiencing depression, like it's almost like sometimes you feel like a burden for like leaning on people when you're in that state.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, when people like pull away, which is a common cause of depression, the people in the relationship have trouble. And it's almost like, I think I read somewhere like one of the main reasons for depression outside of the pandemic, of course, is relationships. So like when your relationship isn't going according to plan, it can really send you into a spiral. So it's like a cycle, I view. And then sometimes even people that are feeling depressed don't want to get into relationships, or they pull away from relationships because of depression. And so it definitely shows up in relationships for damn sure.
And it could absolutely tear down the relationship because we've talked about our experience dating people who are dealing with depression, is that you as the partner gets depressed because you feel helpless. You feel like you can't be there for your partner, or your partner is choosing not to show up for you, which is not the truth, but it's like when you're in that relationship and your emotions are tied to this person, it's really hard to separate the two. So I'm really glad that we're bringing up, because we've talked about mental health and dating before. I'm so glad we're specifically talking about depression for this particular episode, because I think it will be relatable for so many of you out there.
Yeah, we talk about it too in this episode, that there's different types of depression. Like there's more seasonal depression, there's more clinical depression that really has to do with just your own genetic makeup. But I think COVID is it's almost like a new slew of seasonal depression. And yeah, like I think a lot of it comes down to how you're managing it and what steps you're taking. So it's not to say that like people that are experiencing depression are undateable by any means. I think all of us have bouts of depression in different ways. It's just how do we manage it and kind of work to be the best version of ourselves with it.
And I really like that in this conversation with Tony, is that we don't talk about depression and mental health as an illness, because it's a part of who you are. And I think part of it is cultural differences. Like I bring up sort of growing up in an Asian household where you think about depression as you're at fault. Well, you're depressed because you got yourself there. Well, that's not really the case. A lot of times it could be hereditary. It could be a chemical imbalance. So I like that we don't place the blame. It's more about, if you have feelings of depression, how do we navigate and how do we thrive in that environment, because it is doable.
And we definitely recommend people to listen to the older episode that we had, because it was, I think it actually might have been our most popular episode, or one of our top episodes. It's called Mental Health and Dating with Jonathan Fan Tram, who has a startup called Reflect. So we talked like a little more like high level, and he also did share his own stories and own challenges with anxiety and depression. But we did talk like more high level of how it shows up in dating and relationships. And of course, this was pre-pandemic, so there's a little bit of a different twist, but I think a lot of that stuff is a good complement to this episode for sure. So go back to our back catalog if you haven't, or just re-listen again. I might do the same. I think it's always helpful to hear these types of conversations.
Absolutely, because it helps you put language around what you're feeling. Sometimes you're just like, oh, what is this? It's not anxiety, it's not anger, it's what is it? And hearing other people's experiences has really opened up my vocabulary about how I describe my own emotions and mental health. So it's really fantastic to listen to these interviews, even if you're kind of newer to this space. You're like, this is the first time I'm starting to feeling like not myself. Well, this is the perfect way to open up that conversation with yourself about what is happening in your mind.
Or if you have a partner that's going through this, it's definitely good. I think it was really helpful to hear, like, I mean, I've experienced this with my ex, and I've obviously heard his experience, but it was good to hear Tony, who is like totally removed, because it's like the emotions of talking about it with a partner is different than just hearing someone else share their story. And I think there is like a lot to be learned from that. And yeah, I mean, I was looking back at like what episode was it? It was season 7 that we touched.
Dang.
So it's been a while.
A lifetime ago.
Definitely go back and check that out. But I think we also do want to call up front, and we said this in our last episode, like if you really are, in a place that you're feeling like really bad thoughts right now, there is like prevention hotlines. So I think there's 1-800-273-TALK, which is a 24-hour crisis center. And you can obviously always call 911 if it's an emergency. So definitely hope you can learn from this episode. But if you are feeling like this is like a really bad state, like take those extra precautions.
And for everybody else who may not be experiencing this right now, reach out to your friends. I think this is the time. Reach out to your family, reach out to your network. I've talked about this before, but around this, well, I guess a little bit before this month of last year, I lost my college roommate to suicide. And she had been battling depression, and I lived with her for almost 4 years, and I never saw any signs of it. And I keep like replaying our years together, and I'm like, how did I not see this? And I've had long conversations with her sisters about it, and they were like, we didn't really see it either. She just came off so jovial and just so like supportive all the time, and I had no idea she was battling these internal demons. So to me, I regret not reaching out to her more, especially in moments where I felt like, oh, everything should be fine, right? Like everything seems like fine. She posts on Facebook, she posts on Instagram, she seems fine. You just never know what someone's going through. So even just one text, one phone call could save someone's life, believe it or not.
I 100% agree on that. And I think that is the part that's hard, is like you think of someone that's depressed as being like sad and gloomy. And that really isn't, like, I mean, they might be experiencing that in private, but a lot of times the external, like a lot of comedians have depression. And that's like a very common thing. Super common. Yeah, a lot of people that are super jovial and like especially very extroverted, like sometimes when you're feeling like the need to be around people all the time, it is covering some of the inner stuff. And I think that's why this pandemic has been really challenging for people, because that's almost been like stripped from them. So it's like facing those demons like head on. So I think sometimes it isn't the obvious people. And I think also it's not always people that are like single or lonely. Like people can be lonely no matter their relationship status. So I think that's also important to remember, that just because on Facebook it looks like they have it all, it definitely does not mean that.
And it shows up in different ways. It doesn't show up in the kind of overly characterized way of someone not being able to get out of bed and saying, oh, I'm depressed. It could show up in your work life. It could show up in over posting on Facebook. Sometimes it could show up in the way you talk, and you don't even realize it. I think it also shows up in this is related to our episode last week, is your own body image views of yourself.
For sure.
And you don't even realize it.
Some of the times I felt the most down have been because I don't feel good, like body wise. And it 100% correlates. Or like we heard from Erin last week. So if you haven't listened to that episode, definitely check it out. It was, I think, one of our, I feel like I'm always saying this, our most popular episode, but this truly.
Like every episode of every season of The Bachelor, they're like, this is the most dramatic season. This is Julie with Dateable. This is the most exciting.
It really
episode.
is. But this actually truly was our most listened to episode, and some of it did come because of the time. I mean, some of it was the topic, and then some of it was the timing of it being after we were featured on new and noteworthy, and like at the top of the charts.
I'm still
I know we're
myself.
Still up there. We're not like at the top because they've added new people, but we are still on that list right now, which is amazing. So again, shout out to all the new people. I've seen a ton of new people come into the Facebook group that have said they've found us in the last week. So we are so happy you're here. We're happy you're taking that next step and coming along. A lot of people have said they've just been going through and binging all the episodes. So we'd love to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah. And also
dive right in.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think back to last week's episode, I mean, that like some of the stuff that was said to Erin, it's like that.
Oh
like
my gosh.
Like, you know, like even if you don't have like bouts of depression, how can that not make you feel bad and depressed? Like it's just so crazy, but
it's so crazy. And that's what inspired our Would You Rather for last week. The question was, if you were given a pair of magical contact lenses that can make you see bodies differently, would you rather that the contact lenses make you see yourself, your own body as perfect all the time, or see other people's bodies as perfect all the time?
This is why UA is on the Would You Rather. I feel like you have like the best like you know, creative like magic contact lenses. I just love it. I would never even think of that.
In a virtual world.
This is how we pair well together. But
exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
there was some.
I smoke too much weed. That's what it is. I'm high all the time. So I'm super creative.
If UA puts the Would You Rather up a day late, it's because she needs to smoke first.
Yeah, this is why it was a day late. I was like, oh shit, it's Thursday. Oops.
It's like your weekly excuse.
Really.
But it was so interesting seeing some of the comments on the Facebook post, because we've been putting these up on Facebook and Instagram. Of course, on Instagram, you can always DM us like some of your comments too. But on Facebook, I just feel like there were so many people that were like, neither. I don't want, like, nothing is perfect. And I totally get what you're saying with this. It's a would you rather. We're not saying like, it's more of your perception of being perfect. And I think some people clarified that well. It's like, I think Erin actually herself, she's been an active member of the group, which has been great, along with Tony, who's our guest this week.
Guest for this week,
but
yes. That's how we source our guests now, just from our Facebook group.
Exactly.
Perfect.
But she made a comment like, it's all about looking at like the wrinkles or the scars and seeing them as perfect. And for that reason, I would go with myself, because I actually think we're a lot harder on ourselves than we are with others. I very rarely find myself judging other people's bodies. Like for the most part, I'm always like, oh, like they look great, I wish I would look like them. It's more of like, I wish I would be like that, opposed to like, ew, what is, you know, like up with that. I don't feel like those thoughts don't really run through my mind that much. So I would definitely choose myself, because I think I'm a lot harder on myself than probably other people even view me, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think, whoa, do you see my lipstick going into my microphone? My virtual lipstick is now on my microphone. This is what happens when you wear virtual makeup.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Stay away from my microphone. Those are the magical lenses that I have. I think, you know, the thing is, and some people have mentioned this too, and some of the men have mentioned in our Facebook group, I already see other people as perfect, and I'm hardest on myself. So I would definitely choose that. And other people have been like, I could really use that boost of confidence. So if I can see myself as perfect body in my eyes, then that will give me the boost. And then some others have been like, if I see other people as more perfect, then I can focus more on like the feelings as opposed to like the physical, I guess, shortcomings. And I think that's where I am too, because I've mentioned already, I also work in the fitness industry. I'm constantly looking at people's bodies, and sometimes it's hard for me to get past their physical body to get to like, what is this person really like? And what are their key characteristics? I fail to see that right away because I'm constantly looking at bodies as for my job. So if I can get to a point, I would suck at my job. I would get fired. But if I can get to a point where I can see past the physical bodies, and I think it would be less of a distraction for me. So I would choose the other.
Maybe you would get promoted because there'd be more diversity in bodies.
There you go. It'd be like everybody's perfect. But you are more in the majority with what people said. 80% of people chose to see their own bodies as perfect versus where I am in the 20% of people choosing to see other bodies as perfect. Either way, I think the key here is the perception of perfection. It's not that these bodies are perfect, is that all of a sudden you're like, yes, this is what a perfect body is in my own world.
I feel like there were so many great tips. Like Erin shared obviously a bunch in the episode, but she even made like a comment like about like in the episode she talked about this of like recognizing your so-called faults, and like being like, this wrinkle is beautiful. It has made me wise. Like, what is like the different things that you can point out? And one of our other Facebook members, Shieldy, made a comment about like when she gets home, there's like a tactic she uses that she like takes off like her jacket or, like gets ready for the night and like removes basically anytime she's removing something, it's like removing all the negative thoughts of that day. And I love that so much. So it's like, how do we keep training ourselves to see this stuff, the imperfections as perfect?
Ooh, that's a really great ritual. Talk about ceremonious. Like, go home and just remove all the negativity with each piece of clothing.
I mean, speaking of other great rituals, we had our first installment last night of the sounding board where people, we did our first monthly challenge. So we have another audio series that's part of the sounding board available for all members, whatever level you join at. And it's been great. We talked about limiting beliefs last month. And now this month, it's all about dealing with ambiguity, which I think everyone can relate to right now. Again,
uncertainty,
with COVID times. But even before COVID, I feel like there's so much uncertainty in like dating and relationships, and it's all about how do you manage that. So we had a discussion group for anyone that wanted to, and of course you're always welcome to just do this yourself. You don't have to talk it out, but people really loved it, and they said there were just so many interesting revelations and hearing people's limiting beliefs. Like I got some feedback that was really great hearing men and women share them, because a lot of times like we think we're alone in how we feel, and then also hearing someone else, it's kind of like the body thing. It's appreciating where they're coming from and then having that compassion next time like you're with other people on dates, like you're like, no, someone actually might feel like this is holding them back. So if you're not in the sounding board already, definitely get in there. This is another call out. And there was a little confusion just for some new people coming in. So just to clarify, we have a Facebook group, Love in the Time of Corona. That is a free Facebook group. We do ask that you fill in the information though, because we do want to still make sure it's filled with dateable listeners and friends and not just like randoms off the internet. So there's that. But then there's the sounding board, which is basically going to bring things to the next level, which is our paid membership site. And we do have a Facebook group for that too, to do the happy hours and podcast discussion groups and now monthly challenge discussion groups. And we also have the other features we've talked about with sounding board, depending on your tier. It's either, our monthly dateable after show events, which we have a great one in store this month with Logan Yuri, another favorite past guest, if I might say it one more time.
Most dramatic season ever. I'm just going to do that every time you say that.
Yes. And also we have a coffee date, or coffee date with UA and I. So definitely check out dateablepodcast.com/sounding board. If you want more details, we'd love to have you as a member.
The whole point is to know that you're not in this alone. You don't have to navigate through this alone. None of us need to be alone in any of this. And that's why we create the sounding board, is to not feel alone. Even though you can do these exercises and watch the events by yourself and not interact, that's totally up to you. We don't force any sort of interaction. But isn't it nice to hear that other people are going through similar things? I mean, it's just there's something really nice. Like, it's not misery loves company. It's more just like, people love company in their thoughts.
Yep.
So that's
Totally.
all it is.
And speaking of Tony, who is our guest today, him and a few of our other members have ordered their Dateable merch.
Oh, yes.
And we will soon have them as Instagram models if they choose to. We had one other member, Chris, say that he was getting photos done by, I think, his sister. So... But they both, the two of them at least, both ordered the socially distant yet emotionally available sweatshirts or t-shirts. And I was like, you guys got to put that in your dating profile and let's see what responses we get. So if you haven't gotten merch yet, it's dateablepodcast.com/shop. And if you're a sounding board member, there's extra discounts for you too.
Oh man, I would love to do an A/B test of them wearing the shirt in their profile photos and them not wearing the shirt and see how many more swipes they get, right?
Oh, I'm totally doing that when I get my Quarantine from Fuckboy shirt.
Oh, you have to. That has to be every profile photo you have. It just has to. I can't wait to get my Stay Dateable fanny pack, except it's sold out. We sold out of a lot of stuff, but eventually when it comes back in stock. Can't wait for that. So we've hyped up Tony enough where we want to get to his interview. Now let's get to Dating with Depression with Tony.